title of the sermon is Seasons. So today we're going to go for a walk. Don't worry, you guys don't have to get up right now. But how many of you enjoy walking, by the way? Some of you enjoy walking. I know some of you maybe that need knee surgery or have had knee surgery. Maybe it's a little bit different. I know some people that enjoy running. There's this man named Paul right now that he's going to be representing this group called Venture. And he's doing this great world race. And this is an endurance race that's incredible. The Venture program does a phenomenal job of helping to bring awareness to sexual trafficking and also to save victims and free them from that life. And so he's going to be going on this great world race, and it's an endurance race. So what they're doing is they're doing 7 marathons in 7 continents in 1 week. So that he's already raised almost $250,000 for this challenge, and it's going to be starting November 15th. So be in prayer for Paul. His name's Paul Herkman, and there's like 4 individuals that are going on this. It's incredible what they're doing. We're excited just to see how they are going to make a difference through this, and I can't imagine. I've never ran anything close to a marathon. I do not enjoy running. My twin brother, who would love, he did cross country. I did 200 meters for track. That was like my length. The longest I would go is 200 meters. It was like I just did not enjoy that. I like going on elliptical. I love canoeing. I enjoy biking. But there's something special about going on a walk, especially going for a walk with my wife. I really love going for walks with my wife. And today we're going to take a walk through the seasons. There are so many applications to this analogy, but we are going to explore some today. So I think about my daughter, Ashley. She just had, this is her first experience being in a musical. 6th grader. Gets the lead part. But there's a cycle and a life of a show. The idea, the planning of the schedule, the casting, the introduction phase, the new excitement, the put in the work phase, the crunch time phase, the 4-hour practice phase, practices again and again and again, and then the performance. And just like that, life is filled with seasons. Books have been written on this concept. Gary Chapman wrote this book called The 4 Seasons of Marriage, where he applies it to marriage and goes through the different seasons. Charles Spurgeon, he had a sermon that he put it like this: 4 seasons fill the measure of the year. In their mysterious round they come and go, and all combined display a moving harmony of wise design, most glorifying to our God. So we're going to look at the scripture and follow a few individuals through seasons. We'll take glimpses of other characters in the Bible, but we'll follow 3 specifically through the seasons. So first we're going to start in Ecclesiastes 3:1. And by the way, if you want the scriptures for the sermon, there is a list back there. Feel free to grab a list if you haven't already, and you can follow all the sermons or look them up or have them with you while I'm preaching so that you can follow along. I know sometimes I take the time for you guys to turn, and sometimes you're like, oh, Pastor, you just went a little bit too quick. I want to be able to get there in time. And so that's why we printed that out for you so you are able to do that. So in Ecclesiastes 3, verse 1, it says, there's a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. And in Genesis 8:22, it says, as long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night will never cease. I kind of like that promise. You think about, so we're going to start in spring. Spring, it's a season of new life, a season of new opportunities, a season of new beginnings. I think about the life of David. David was anointed to be the next king. In 1 Samuel 16, the Lord said to Samuel, how long will you mourn for Saul, since I have rejected him as king over Israel? Fill your horn with oil and be on your way. I'm sending you to Jesse of Bethlehem. I've chosen one of his sons to be king. So this has happened. Like Saul was the first king of Israel, but Saul had disobeyed the Lord. And so God was like, we're going to anoint a new king. There's going to be someone new. And so David was the least of his brothers. He was out tending the sheep when Samuel came to anoint the next king. Went through all the brothers. Samuel's looking at him like, oh, this guy looks pretty good. I think he's going to be the next one. And God's like, no, I look at the heart. I know better than you. You might be a prophet, but I'm God. Like, I know better. So trust me. And so he went through and then went through all the sons. And it was like, all right, God, there's nobody left. And he's like, do you have any other sons? He's like, well, there's one. He's out tending watching the sheep. Like, well, bring him in. And God said, that's the one. And so he anointed David. It was something brand new. It was like, wow, He is anointed to be the next king. And then you think about how he defeated Goliath. How this excitement as far as defeating the enemy. It's the spring, the new beginning. Now we look at Joseph. In Genesis 37, it says, now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons because he had been born to him in his old age. And he made an ornate robe for him. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. But Joseph had a dream. And when he told his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright. Well, your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it. So Joseph is excited. He just had this awesome dream. Have you guys ever had a dream where you wake up and you're like, oh, that's a great dream. I just want to go back to sleep and live that dream again. I know some of you probably it's different. It's like, okay, that was a nightmare. I'm glad I'm up. I'm not, But sometimes you have that dream. And I know some of you have siblings here. And I mean, could you imagine going to your sibling and be like, guess what? Someday you're going to bow down to me. Isn't that great? Well, how would you respond to that? Would you be like, yes, let it be today. All right. Probably not, right? You'd probably be like, what did you eat last night? You're probably wondering what's going on. But for Joseph, this was something new. It was like God was speaking to him, and he was excited about it. He didn't know what to do with it. He didn't know where to go with it. But he was excited about this new season. You think about Jesus calling to the disciples. In Luke 5, it says, one day as Jesus was standing by the lake of Gennesaret, the people were crowding around him and listening to the word of God. He saw at the water's edge 2 boats left there by the fishermen who were washing their nets. He got into one of the boats, left there by the fishermen who were washing their nets. So he got into one of the boats, the one belonging to Simon, asked him to put out a little from shore. Then he sat down and taught the people from the boat. When he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, put out into deep water and let down the nets for a catch. And Simon answered, Master, we've worked hard all night and haven't caught anything. But because you say so, I will let down the nets. When they had done so, they caught such a large number of fish that their nets began to break. So they signaled their partners in the other boat to come and help them. And they came and filled both boats so full that they began to sink. When Simon Peter saw this, he fell at Jesus' knees and said, go away from me, my Lord. I am a sinful man. For he and all his companions were astonished at the catch of fish they had taken. And so were James and John, the sons of Zebedee, Simon's partners. Then Jesus said to Simon, don't be afraid. From now on you will fish for people. So they pulled their boats up on shore, left everything, and followed him. The excitement of the new beginning. Think about this. What was Jesus' occupation at that point? Anybody know? They say he was kind of like a carpenter, did stuff with wood, and all of a sudden he's around these fishermen. And they're like, anybody fish here? Anybody ever gone fishing? A few of you? So, okay, imagine me going with you fishing. Because the last time I fished was when I was a small kid. So imagine me going fishing with you. We fish for hours, all day long, all night. We just fish all the time. And then all of a sudden I say to you, hey, guess what? I think you need to use a different lure, different stuff. Try going over here. I think we need to go over here. You'd probably look at me and be like, Pastor, I know you're my pastor, but this is my area, all right? We're not in church now, You probably would be kind of a little bit offended, a little bit like, all right, but they were like, all right, Jesus, we'll do this, in their minds. I'm sure they're skeptical, like, okay, how long is this going to take us? Well, I guess it won't take us too. It'll be okay. We'll just do this. And then all of a sudden, all these fish come, all these fish, and they're like, what just happened? What just happened? I mean, that is a phenomenal miracle. Think about fishing yourself. Have you ever used nets to catch fish or used anything where you caught a lot of fish? I mean, this isn't like one of those vessels that, those tons and tons of vessels that's going out and catching fish. It's not like that. It's like this is just a boat that they're catching fish. And all of a sudden they have to get another boat because they're like, we're going to sink. We're going to sink. And at that point, that fisherman all of a sudden realized, like, okay, this person, they're not just someone that's good with their hands with wood. They're not just like carpenter, not just like, this someone is with this guy. He fell to his knees and like, I'm not worried, I'm a sinner. And Jesus said, don't worry about it. Come, follow me. And they were like, all right. I just witnessed this amazing miracle. I'm going to come and follow you. I'm going to come and follow you. It's a new beginning. It's exciting. Could you imagine like waking up all of a sudden like, okay, I was fishing, and now he said we're going to be fishing for men. I have no idea what that means, but this guy's incredible. Let's go. Let's follow. Let's see what happens. I know that he has life. He has hope. I can trust in him, and I'm going to. Then we come to the phase of winter. So sometimes, I don't know if you've ever thought about this, but sometimes when you think about winter, sometimes it's like the young children phase. I don't know, where you're like, when will I ever get sleep again? Like, I don't know, I like once you get past the young children phase, then all of a sudden you see young kids and you're like, oh, that's so cute, I like being around them. But when you're in that phase, when you have kids that are like 1, 2, 3, 4, and you're like, this is crazy. Like once they start walking around and you're like, I have to follow them everywhere. Can I just build a pen and they can just stay in, like you're like, how am I going to do this? And you're like, when can I sleep? Okay, I might get an hour here. Maybe if they fall asleep, I can sleep for, but I don't know what's going to happen when they wake up, where they're going to go. And it's just a chaotic phase where, I've talked to people on the phone where they're just like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't know how I'm going to do this. Like, how will it ever change? Will something ever be different? And sometimes it can almost seem like a winter phase to people where they're just stuck in the cycle and they're just like, I love my kids, but I don't know how I'm going to make it till tomorrow. I think about Joseph. When Joseph's brothers were ticked to him, and one day Joseph had to go bring them some food, and they saw him and they said, oh, let's kill him. And then they decided, okay, let's throw him in this cistern, let's throw him down here, and we'll decide what to do with him. And then all of a sudden they saw these people come by. They're like, oh, let's sell him as a slave. And so they sold Joseph as a slave, sold him into slavery. And worked for this man named Potiphar as a servant. And then he was falsely accused of raping his master's wife. And he was thrown in prison. So think about this, his beginnings. He's like having these amazing dreams. His dad loves him. Life is good. All of a sudden he's in slavery, working for some guy, working hard for him and seemingly doing well. And then all of a sudden, his master's wife wants him to sleep with her, and he's like, I'm not doing that. And she's like, she just tells her husband that he did that even though he didn't. Gets thrown into prison. I mean, that's a winter phase. I don't know, like, that is, I can't imagine, like, the long winter that Joseph faced. I think about David. Look at the life of David. In 1 Samuel 21, starting in verse 10, it says, that day David fled from Saul. So later on, David was anointed king, and David had success in the military, and all of a sudden Saul got jealous and more jealous and wanted to kill him. And so that day David fled from Saul, went to Achish, king of Gath. But the servants of Achish said to him, isn't this David, the king of the land? Isn't he the one they sing about in their dances? Saul has slain his thousands and David his tens of thousands. David took these words to heart and was very much afraid of Achish, king of Gath. So he pretended to be insane in their presence. And while he was in their hands, he acted like a madman, making marks on the doors of the gate and letting saliva run down his beard. Achish said to his servants, look at the man. He's insane. Why bring him to me? Am I short of madman that you have to bring this fellow here to carry on like this in front of me? Must this man come into my house? So think about this. All right, David is supposed to be the next king. He's this great warrior. He's killed Goliath. He's done all these exploits. And now he's in a foreign land, acting like a crazy man, letting his saliva go all over his beard and everything, just so that he doesn't get killed. I mean, if there's not a winter season, if that's not one, I don't know what is. I don't know about you, but how often have you had to go flee somewhere and act like a madman just so they don't kill you? then you think about even later on in his life, once David became king, there was always problems in the family. He had a son named Absalom that wanted the throne, and that had gained a fallen and was coming to take the throne. And David had to flee with his household. He had to flee. One man was throwing rocks at him and saying, "Oh, look at you, you deserve this." And he was fleeing for his life in hopes that his son wouldn't kill him. I couldn't imagine that. Think about and for any of you that have sons, think about your son trying to come kill you. I mean, I like that would be devastating. I couldn't imagine something like that where it's like, okay, my son who I love and have spent time with, played basketball with, all of a sudden someday I'm fleeing for my life because he's trying to kill me. That's what David was doing. That's a winter season. You think about Jesus, when Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he was praying to the Lord. He was like, "Take this cup from me. It's your will, not mine. I will do what you want, God." But he knew what was to come. And he was just cried, tears of blood. It was like, just, God. I couldn't imagine the agony that he felt in that moment when he knew what was going to happen. And then his crucifixion. You know, his disciples abandoned him. They all fled, and he was crucified on a cross, knowing who he was, and yet he chose to do that. I think about another character in the Bible. I don't know if you've ever heard of Hannah, but she had wanted a child for a long time, and she couldn't get pregnant. And she was weeping in the temple. The guy thought he was drunk. She was drunk because she was so distraught. But she was praying that she would be able to have children. After many, many, many years, she did. But what she had said is, "I'm going to devote this child to God. This child will be God's." And that was Samuel. That's the one who anointed David as king. It's amazing. But she had gone through that winter season, that dark, dark season. For those women that have wanted to have children but have not been able to, it is so deep and dark. It is so despairing. It has rocked women's souls that have gone through that period where they have desired so deeply to have a child, but not able to. I think about something much smaller than that, but even when I was in high school, I dealt with pneumonia when I was a kid, and then when I was in high school, I was in a play like my daughter, not the lead or anything, but I had pneumonia in both my lungs, and I was performing every night, nonstop coughing. They were probably like, "Oh, I wish this guy would just go home because he's ruining the play." But I was just coughing the entire time. And then my mom finally brought me to the doctor, and the doctor said, "You're going to the hospital like right now. You're about to die." And so I was in the hospital for days on end, recovering from this pneumonia. That felt like a winter season for a teenager when you're all of a sudden in the hospital and they're like, "Okay, if you went much further, you were going to die." That's tough to hear. Many of you have gone through winter seasons. Right now, you guys could probably name like 5 different winter seasons that you've gone through where you just were like, "I just want to see the sun. I just want to know that there's hope. I just want to know that God still cares." I think about Psalm 13 where it says, "How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I wrestle with my thoughts and day after day have sorrow in my heart? How long will my enemy triumph over me? Look on me and answer, Lord my God, give light to my eyes, or I will sleep in death. And my enemy will say, I have overcome him, and my foes will rejoice when I fall. But I trust in your unfailing love. My heart rejoices in your salvation. I will sing the Lord's praise, for he has been good to me." Amen. Let's move into summer. The glory years. I don't know about you, but I love summer. Summer is my favorite season. I know some of you are like, it's too hot. That's why I live in Minnesota. But I love summer. I love it. And these years can look different for everyone. And some may not think that they had glory years. Some of you might be like, oh, I don't know if I've had glory years. But when I'm talking about this, I'm talking about when everything seemed good in life. It might have been when you were 8 years old and you were playing with your friends outside on the slip and slide. You know, it might have been when you were the star quarterback of your football team and dating a cheerleader. Maybe the glory years were when you went to college and got to explore the world. Or maybe the glory years were when you're driving around that classic muscle car along the highway with no cares in the world. Or maybe your glory years were when your child was first born or your first grandchild. Maybe it was the first year of your marriage. Maybe your glory years were the best vacation of your life. Summer is like that. When that smile comes easy, when the joy comes freely, when everything seems like success. I think about David. When David unified the kingdom of Israel, defeated the enemies on all sides. Those were the glory years. I think about Joseph. When Joseph, after he's thrown in prison, he ended up interpreting the king's dreams. And then he was put in charge of all of Egypt. Finding a wife, had kids. Seeing success when drought was destroying other lands, but not the land where he was living, because he followed through with what God had showed him to do. He stored grain during the 7 good years so they could survive the 7 years of famine and drought. He had that summer season where it's like, oh, everything's finally going good. I think about Jesus in John 6, 1 through 15. It says, sometime after this, Jesus crossed the far shore of the Sea of Galilee, and a great crowd of people followed him because they saw the signs he had performed by healing the sick. Then Jesus went up on a mountainside and sat down with his disciples. The Jewish Passover festival was near. When Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming toward him, he said to Philip, where shall we buy bread for these people to eat? He asked this only to test him, for he had already had in mind what he was going to do. Philip answered him, it would take more than a half year's wages to buy enough bread for each one to have a bite. Another of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. Here's a boy, got 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. But how far will that go among so many? And Jesus said, have the people sit down. There was plenty of grass in that place, and they sat down. There was about 5,000 men who were there. Jesus then took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish. When they had all had enough to eat, he said to his disciples, gather the pieces that are left over. Let nothing be wasted. Must have lived in the Midwest with some of us, that right? Leftover night. All right, come on. So they gathered them and filled 12 baskets with the pieces of the 5 barley loaves left over by those who had eaten. After the people saw the sign Jesus performed, they began to say, surely this is the prophet who is to come into the world. Jesus, knowing that they intended to come and make him king by force, withdrew again to a mountain by himself. So this was kind of like the high time. It was like people were following after Jesus. They were seeing these miracles. The crowds were growing, and they were like, we want to follow after Jesus. This is amazing. He's coming to take over. Let's do it. They're all like, yes, let's go. It's kind of this summertime of excitement and a wave just where I'm sure all the disciples were like, yes, it's happening. It's happening. Look, it's growing. It's growing. Look at all the people. Jesus, this is awesome. You know, not knowing what Jesus had in mind. These disciples were probably thinking, yes, this is awesome. This is great. This is gonna be the best thing ever. Look at how many people are part of this. Jesus, do you see this? Thinking, Jesus would be impressed by that, right? So they're all excited about this. And Jesus does this miracle where he feeds all these people with 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. How many of you guys would like to be able to do that sometimes when family's coming over? I know Thanksgiving's coming up. Some of you are thinking about all the work that's going to come with that and all the cooking. You're like, oh, Jesus, you want to multiply that? You want to help me here with a Thanksgiving meal? I mean, this miracle was incredible. Jesus knew that they intended to make him king by force. He withdrew to a mountain by himself. He knew what they had in mind to do. He was like, but he knew what he was here for. One other person that I just want to bring to this season is, you think about Solomon. Solomon was David's son. And when Solomon became king, God gave him wisdom and wealth. During that time, they had no enemies around him. The kingdom flourished. It was a time of wealth and peace for the nation of Israel. It was a summertime. And then we move into fall. I don't know about you, but I've taken so many pictures of these trees and sky lately. It's been phenomenal. When they even have the reds and the yellows and all this, I just love it. I'm in awe of the beauty that God has created. Fall is such a beautiful season. I know all the leaves pretty much fell off my one huge tree right in the front yard, like in the last day or two. I couldn't see one blade of grass. And, and I was like, okay, what am I going to do? So it's in a big pile now. My kids have jumped in it, and now I got to figure out sometime when it's not frigid to get it bagged up. But when I'm talking about the fall season for this analogy, I'm referring to harvest season. I'm referring to the season of reflection, a time of change, a season of true beauty in the end. When I think about David, I think about how he was restored to the throne after Absalom's death. See, God had brought people along to frustrate Absalom's plan. And so there ended up being a war between them. And Absalom was killed. And then David was brought back to the throne to rule. I think about things at the end of David's life. You know how Solomon became the next king? Well, there was another son that tried to take the kingdom at the end of David's life. And David got word of it and was like, okay, we got to put Solomon on the throne now before I die. We got to get this set before the kingdom's taken away. And they were able to get everything in order before his death. The change that took place at the very end. I think about Joseph in Genesis 45 where it says, then Joseph could no longer, so Joseph, his brothers came. They came to get food, just like everybody else. Everybody came to get food. And his brothers didn't recognize him, but he did. And Joseph went with this for a while. He didn't reveal himself right away. But eventually, in Genesis 45, it says, his brothers were there. It said, then Joseph could no longer control himself before all his attendants. And he cried out, have everyone leave my presence. So there was no one with Joseph when he made himself known to his brothers. And he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard him, and Pharaoh's household heard about it. And Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Is my father still living? That is so powerful, even that. Being away that long. They thought he was dead. And he sees them and he's like, I'm Joseph. Is my father still living? Could you imagine, like right now we have cell phones, we have so many ways. It's like we can call them up and if they don't answer you, if your family doesn't answer you within like an hour or something like that, you're like, okay, are they okay? Or is something going on? But this is years, this is such a long time. And he didn't know. And he's like, is my father still living? Is he still living? But his brothers were not able to answer him because they were terrified of his presence. I mean, they did not expect to see him. Then Joseph said to his brothers, come close to me. When they had done so, he said, I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. For 2 years now, there has been famine in the land. And for the next 5 years, there will be no plowing and reaping. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth and to save your lives by great deliverance. So then it was not you who sent me here, but God. Joseph was reconciled to his brothers, and he saw his father. And they had this whole reunion in Egypt. His whole family was saved. It was quite a change for all of them. But it was a beautiful, beautiful reunion. I think about Jesus. Think about the beauty of salvation. The beauty of being restored back into right relationship with God. There's an incredible beauty in the resurrection of Jesus, in what Jesus did. There's a change that takes place in us when we encounter Jesus. When we encounter him and then we decide, I'm going to follow after you, Jesus. And we make that decision. All of a sudden, our lives are changed. Our lives are changed more than the changing of the leaves. Our lives are transformed forever. It's such a beautiful, incredible, amazing thing. to think about what happens at that moment. When I think about these seasons, one of the things that I have to remind myself and remind you is don't compare your season to someone else's season. You might be in a winter season, and you're looking at someone else, and you see the sun, you see the flowers, you see their spring and summer, and you're jealous. You're sitting in there in winter, and you're dying. You're like, it's 30 below, and we have a foot of snow, and I haven't seen the sun in a week. And someone posts about their picture on the beach, and 80-degree weather, and they're like, oh, I can't love it here, and you get jealous. You're like, ah. Sometimes that's the way it is in our lives. We're going through that winter season. We're going through that struggle where we're reading the Psalms and crying out like, God, where are you? God, I need you. I don't know what to do. And this person just runs by you and they're whistling, they're all excited about life. But we can't be mad at them because they're in a different season. Someday when you're in that summer season and they're in that winter season, they're going to be the one walking by wanting to hit you. I'm just saying, we're all in different seasons at different times. But we can encourage each other through the different seasons. You can encourage one another. Trust the Lord to give you joy in the place that you are at, and trust him for what your heart desires. In Philippians 4:11-13, it says, I am not saying this because I am in need, for I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all this through him who gives me strength. We will go through the seasons of life, and in all seasons, God is there. He is there with us. Trust in him. Every single season that you walk through, God is there. You might be like Joseph in a prison situation. You might be like David running for his life. You might be in one of those difficult seasons. But God is still there. God is saying, just hold on. Just hold on. Just have hope. There will be another spring. There will be another summer. You will have an opportunity to rejoice. And sometimes that summer for us might not come till heaven. There's certain seasons we don't know when our time is up. God does, and that's an amazing thing. I wouldn't want to know when I was going to die. I really wouldn't. It's amazing that we get to trust God with that. But we need to trust him. Some of your family. You need to say, all right, God, I don't know what to do with this family member. I know what they're going through, and I just want them to know you, Jesus. I want us to have a restored relationship. And I don't know how to do that, God. And God is saying, trust in me. Pray for them and trust in me. God will work through each season. But we need to trust in him. We need to be anchored to him through all of it. That's what gets us through each season. That's what helps us to draw other people to him. When people see you going through winter season and trusting God, it's like a ray of sunshine. They're like, how can they trust God in the midst of that season? In the midst of what they're going through? How can they trust God? I need to talk to them and find out. What's different about them? If I was them, I'd be so depressed and discouraged, and I wouldn't know what to do with myself. Yeah, they're crying. They're going through difficult times. Obviously, they're not just immune to it. They're not ignoring it. But there's something different. They have some hope. And so you have the opportunity to give hope to others so that they might know and follow after Jesus. It's one of the most amazing things. So let's pray right now. God, I pray for each one of us today. I pray that we would just dwell upon you, God. No matter, you know which season we're in right now. Each person here, there's some people right now that are in summer season. Things are going well. There's some people in spring. There's some people in fall. There's some people in winter. God, you know our hearts. You know exactly where we're at. And I pray that we would put our total confidence in you. We would trust in you. We know that you have a plan and a purpose And I know, God, that sometimes it's hard. Sometimes we got to cry out those psalms because sometimes we don't know how to trust in you because we're struggling. But God, you give us hope. You give us that ray of sunshine that helps us to hold on. Jesus, I pray that we would be encouraged by your word today, that we would cling to your word, that we would take time to spend reading the Bible, that we would take time to enjoy getting to know who you are, God. Jesus, I pray for each person this week that they would take time to listen to you, that they would take time to encourage other people with what they're going through. Jesus, thank you for never leaving us, being with us always. I pray that we would walk out this week and we would just be used of you, that we would obey you and listen closely to what you have for us. Thank you so much, Lord Jesus.